Okay. Ken Anderton is out of town, so I've agreed to chair the meeting today. So give me grace if I miss something, and definitely point it out so we can get it done. So first, I would like to call to the boards to order, and I think this time we'll go west to east. So Pen 1. James, you're on mute if you're trying to corral your board together.
I think that was James Marta.
James,
James Elson is in the meeting.
Do you want, I see James, let's see, he
Oh.
says he's having tech issues. Hey, this is Jeff. I suppose I can go ahead and start calling us to order. PJ, Christopher, are you there? Okay, Claudio Campuzano
present.
and Annalise Kohler.
Present.
And Jeff Noodleman present. So Pen 1 is called to order. Oh, there's James. Sorry, I started without you.
James Allison is present. Sorry, working in the office and having the speakers distract my coworkers. I apologize. Pen 1 has a quorum.
Great. Thank you. And Pen 2, would you like to call yourselves to order, please?
This is Val Humboldt, present. I see our newest member, Eric Molander, is also present. Would you like to register your presence?
Present.
Karen Myers?
Present.
I don't see, is Mary Helen Kincaid present? Is Kathy Kellen present? With 3 of the 5 members present, we have a quorum. I call Pen 2 to order.
Thank you. And I will call MCDD to order. Let's see, who we got? Kenzie Berry
Present.
and Corky Collier.
Present.
Ken Anderton and Schultz are not here today. Nancy Hendrickson is present with, and we have a quorum. MCDD is called to order. And STIC.
Yes, good morning. Calling SDIC board to order, Annalise Kohler,
Present.
Tammy Stephenson,
Present.
Ken Anderson is absent today, Tom Hansel present. SDIC is called to order. Thanks, Nancy, for hosting today.
My pleasure. And I think I also need to call JCA to order.
Thank you.
Okay, so going through the roll call, Tammy Stephenson
Present.
and Claudio Campuzano,
Present.
Karen Meyer,
Present.
right? Reed Wagner. I think he's not here today. But we have a quorum, so JCA is also in session. Thank you, everybody. As usual, we are doing an audio recording. And our very first topic is public testimony. Is there anyone here to testify today? Okay.
There's none.
Hearing none. Okay, so now I'd like to ask all the board's indulgence. We have a late breaking agenda item or something that absolutely has to get done for MCDD while we have quorum. So hearing no objections, I'm going to go ahead and with this agenda item. If you want me to put it to the end, raise your hand. Thanks, everybody. MCD directors, you got an email either last night or this morning about a contract amendment or a contract that needs to take place for our auditors, I believe.
Yes.
And can I get a motion on this item? First of all, were you able to see it because it's late breaking.
If I could maybe say something, Nancy, this is a contract approval for the auditors and other related services that they provide for us. So we need to initiate a new contract for the next period of 5 years. We can cancel this contract at any time, like all of our contracts. So if we only use them for the next couple of years and decide that we want to use a different auditing firm, that's fine. But with MCDD for a 5-year period, it will extend the $100,000. It comes to $109,000. So that's why we're coming to the board for a motion to accept this. Anyway, that's about all. So we just need a motion so that we can move forward with this.
I can do that, Nancy.
Thank you.
I move to approve and authorize the executive director or their designee to negotiate, sign the contract for personal services with James Marta LLP for auditing and related services in the amount of $109,831, using a contract template provided and approved by legal counsel.
And can I get a second? From the MCDD board.
I'll second this, Corky.
Thanks, Corky. Okay, roll call vote. There's 3 of us.
Well,
Corky, did
got-
you talk?
yeah, I got a
about-
quick question. I think Janet, you already answered this, but well, sort of. I want to make sure that Marta Associates understands that in all likelihood, we won't be here in 5 years.
They do understand that, yes.
I
Yeah.
don't want to don't want to do a bait and switch on them. So.
Yes. They also provide the auditing services for the urban district, so.
Thank you.
Excellent question. Thank you, Corky, and thanks, Janet, for presenting. You did a great job. Okay, so I'm going to hold the vote now. Let's see. Corky
Aye.
and Kenzie
Aye.
and Nancy, I vote aye as well. The motion passes unanimously. And we're done with this agenda item. Thank you for your.
Wendy, I just received a text from Reed Wagner that says he's in the waiting room.
I just made it in.
Yay. Welcome.
Sorry for the delay, Reed.
For the record, Reed Wagner has joined on the JCA board. Okay, our first order of business is an audit presentation. Janet, would you like to tee this up?
There we go. Yes, James Marta, he is on the Zoom link and he has a slide presentation, and every year he brings in a presentation to present all of the audits findings and to have a question and answer with all of the board members. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to James.
Okay, can you guys see my presentation on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So I know we've got 5 entities here we want to talk about today, and so on my agenda of what I want to talk about is communications, those charged with governance. So that's you, the board, and the financial audit. And I'm kind of changing that around where we're talking about the things that you need to know first, and then we'll cover the audit, because that's the technical role of the board. And so we have audits of 3 entities, the Multnomah Drainage District, Penn 2, and Sandy. And then we have review reports for Columbia Corridor and Peninsula Drainage number 1. Now, a review is different from an audit. A review, what we do is we don't test the internal controls and such, but when we're testing the others, it's the same environment. But the review report will look at the differences and look at the financials. We will make inquiries to ensure that there's no adjustments that are needed, and so it's a step below an audit. And it's really designed for smaller entities that don't have as much going on. So the responsibilities of the report financial statements are management's. And so a lot of times people look at the audit report and say, oh, this is the auditor's report, but really just the letters on the front is the audit report. The rest is management's representation to you, the board, and we audit those financial statements. Our responsibility is to express an opinion, and we have issued unmodified opinions, and that's the best the auditors can give you. So we have to report interactions with management. So we have to see if they have used other auditors or getting other opinions, and they didn't have any of that. Did we have any disagreements or difficulties? No. And at the end of the audit, the management gives representations that they did disclose all the material facts. In the course of the audit, we read your board minutes, we look at the contracts, we look at transactions, we test controls, and so we get a good understanding of what's happening in the organization. So we know about what's happening in the next 5 years. So the qualitative aspects, there was no changes in the accounting policy. So that's really important, because sometimes accounting standards or how management accounts for things could change, and it would really change how you would see numbers, or it could be perhaps misleading if you didn't know that. And so there were no changes. And the management's judgments, the biggest estimates related to these financial statements are really the pension OPEB liabilities that are included in some of the financial statements. So those are the biggest estimates that management makes. And then the audit procedures, as I said, is more than just checking to see if a number agrees to something. We look at how management controls are there, what policies they have. We read the board minutes to see if things are recorded. We have to understand the systems and procedures. We do testing of controls. So we go ahead and see that management and operations is following the procedures that's approved. When we gather other evidence, we get confirmations, we get legal confirmations, and then we review the rest of the reporting. And so in the review engagements, we do analytical procedures, we do inquiry. It's, as I said earlier, it's narrow in scope in the audit, but the financial statements do look the same. And we have full disclosures in the financials. So that's all the footnotes. So as the results, the scope and timing, the scope is as planned, except on, I think on Sandy, we converted that to an audit because the state wanted that to be an audited this year. The engagements were performed later than expected, just based on the timing of closing of the books. There were no findings in performing the reviews, which we would note if there's any adjustments that we'd recommend, and there's no significant adjustments or findings in the audits. So those are good, clean audits put together by your team. So here, moving from there, so those are the required disclosures, what you as a board needs to know. Going from there, what are the results? So we did give unqualified and unmodified opinions on these, and there's no modifications of Penn 1 and Columbia Corridor. The key report components, if you look at it on you should look at the financial highlights. So there's the auditor's opinion, there'd be financial highlights. We have condensed financial statements that help you better understand on the governmental entities. The report, we have reports on internal controls for the audits only. So so those report and internal controls are designed for us to technically tell you if there is any compliance or control problems, and we're reporting to you that there were none. And then there's a fiscal review of fiscal affairs required by the OAR, and those are in those reports at the end also. And then we have management's representations that we give you, and budget actual comparisons. And so, when I'm showing this box here, we're required to look at your organization in different ways. And this is where you would get report if we found any issues, which we didn't. So you really clean audits from a financial standpoint, a reporting standpoint, and a compliance standpoint. So what are the financial results on these entities? So this is kind of a summary of each entity and what their revenues and increase in or decrease in net position. Now, these entities are not really comparable to a business type entity or a lot of others that have normal operations, because you're very capital intensive. So you really could have a year where you bring in a lot of resources and it apparently shows a profit. And in the subsequent year, then you are spending that on a capital project and it looks like there's a loss. And really that's going to be due to timing of when resources come in and when they're spent, based on the revenue and expense recognition. And so that's just part of this type of business, and just be aware of that. And so you do have some small losses in Pen 1, but that's not just because of mismanagement. It's more of when the projects are happening. And you see the JCA has income of 556,000, increase in net position of 144,000. So the total net position in that is 376. I'm going to show you, this is easier to look over time. I always say when you're looking at numbers and information, it's good to look over time. And so what this does is graphically show the balance sheet. And so what you see is the balance sheet strengthening. So this is the assets growing, but you also have liabilities growing. And so these assets mostly are related to capital improvements, or MCDD. And then you do have liabilities that you use to finance these assets. This is the net position, so that's really the differential between the assets and the liabilities. And so you see it, although you see a big increase in assets, you only see a slight increase here, because to get these assets, you had to issue debt. So this shows the capital assets, and so this shows the depreciable assets. So those are placed in service, and then this kind of the orange color here are work in progress. And so those total stacked up are the total assets, but we're breaking it down to the ones in process and the ones placed in service. And then this red line is the accumulated depreciation. So if we show an asset, we do an accounting adjustment for that each year to show a slight erosion or use of that asset. So if you improve a levee and those improvements are by the engineer, say that has a 30-year life, we'll take 1/30 of that off each year, showing the financial erosion, not the erosion of the levee. Okay, and so on Pen 2, you can see similar, but you do see the net position increasing, and so really that's been strengthening through funding more. So you didn't have liabilities increasing for that program. So that program is relatively debt-free. And so you see a strengthening of the Pen 2 program. And here's the capital assets. So although you see strengthening, the resources for this were provided from other entities. So you didn't have to have debt financing. So this is good to see over the longer run. So you've seen in Pen 2, the capital assets increase, but you do have a lot of work in progress. So you see in 2018, about half work in progress and half in place. And so you do have a lot of big projects that are still in process. And so once those are done, this orange line will be stacked on top. So that will show the total, but those totals are already included in here. We're just breaking out the components here. And SDIC, you do see that assets increasing. And so once again, you see the assets increasing because of using contributions and other outside resources instead of debt financing. And so from a debt standpoint, this entity is very good position, and you can see the assets in place. So most of these are capital assets, and capital means like a building, equipment, land improvements. And then here's the capital assets, same thing. Pen 1, same idea. So you just say the Multnomah Drainage District, the one with the big debt, the rest are just getting resources to pay. And those are capital assets. And so we do have a total on this that shows these two lines stacked up. So that's kind of like a quick overview of what's happened during the year. The overall comments on the audit, there's no opinion modification, so we have to give an unmodified opinion. So auditors don't come in and say in the report, good job. We just say, no modifications. And so that is the best you can get. And there's no deficiencies identified. There have been overall growth in the organizations, and that's been putting in the capital assets and the good management team. Because if you see that you don't have adjustments, you don't have findings, that's demonstration of a good management team. There's a lot to work on. I know that through COVID and staffing has been short, and but your team has been able to bring it together. It did take a little bit longer based on closing, but really good results in the audit. So we really would like to thank Janet and the rest of the staff and the partnership in working together to complete these engagements. With that, are there any questions or other comments?
I'll just say quickly, as someone who's recovering from a spreadsheet centric job, I really appreciate how clean this is and well presented it is. So thank you.
Eric.
Yes, we have a 20% increase in the pension liability 1 year to the next. This is a question for James Marta or members of our staff. Do we expect that pension liability to continue increasing at that rate?
Keith, are you willing, or Ben, or Janet?
I don't know whether or not I can really answer that. Jim, Marta?
So first, let's talk about the drivers of the increase in pension liability. So the drivers are going to be how much payroll you have in it, and if the payroll is increasing, you're going to see pension. The other drivers are going to be the actuarial assumptions on the liability. So sometimes the actuaries will say, we think we're going to earn 8%, and then later on they'll say, you know what, we think over the long run you're going to earn 7%, and so they build that into the pension, so they'll actually increase the pension liability if they think the earnings in the future will be less. So number of employees, actuarial assumptions, and then they will go ahead and adjust the prior period. They will go ahead and compare their assumptions and results. So if they have earnings that don't meet what they have, what you're seeing is you're not seeing the full financial statements of the pension. You're seeing the net. So they look at the pension assets less the pension liabilities, and right now your liabilities are higher, so they're showing that difference. And so if there's any changes in the assets, those could make that swing. So if the assets went down or there's assumptions that changed, those could change both sides. So that being said, a 20% change is a combination of those factors. That's not normal. So the answer is it's not expected to change on that amount. However, when you see the market right now, so next year, it's not going to really include the stock market changes we're seeing, but the year after it may. And so what's happening now in the stock market is affecting what assets are available. And come not this year, but next year, that might bear on the valuation. And so you could see some big jumps.
Thank you.
Do we have other questions on the audit while our expert is here? Our experts, I should say. Tom.
Yeah, it's really directed at Janet and her team. These audits are a reflection of their fiscal stewardness and being on top of the care of these public funds. So Janet and company, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair, if I could just echo that, Janet and your team, thank you. You have carried a lot, and you have all these different organizations and a lot of change in leadership, and you have persevered and done excellent work. And I can't thank you enough for the diligence that you bring to this work, and it makes my job a lot easier having you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, you're getting a lot of claps and thumbs ups to the whole team. So thank you, everybody. So here's a last call for questions. Otherwise, we can move to passing the audit. Each organization needs to do that. Last call. Okay, only thumbs up, no hands up. So let's go from east to west. SDIC.
Thanks, Nancy. I'm asking for a motion on this item. Danny? Mic off?
And there is language on the agenda, I believe.
Yeah, I see it now. I move to accept the audit results for 2020-21 Independent Auditors Report.
I'll go ahead and second that. This is Tom Hansel. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. Roll call vote. Annalise Kohler,
Aye.
Danny Stephenson,
Aye.
Tom Hansel, aye. Motion passes.
Great, thank you. And for MCDD, we need a motion.
Motion to accept the fiscal year 2021 independent auditors report.
And second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Kenzie,
Aye.
Corky,
Aye.
and Nancy, I also vote aye. That's who's here today. Motion passes.
What's the second, please?
Kenzie was.
A small cast of characters today. Okay, Pen 2.
Do I have a motion for Pen 2 concerning the audit report?
Motion to accept the Penn 2 fiscal year 2021 independent auditors report.
Thank you, Eric. Do I have a second? Unmute, please, Karen.
Thank you. I second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote. Karen, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Eric, how do you vote?
Aye.
Val Humble votes aye. The message passed, or the resolution passes.
Thank
Okay.
you, Pen 2. Pen 1.
Pen 1, do I have a motion on the independent auditors report?
Sure. I'll make a motion to accept the Penn 1 FY 2020-2021 independent auditors report.
Okay, thank you, Claudio. Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Jeff and Annalisa both. Thank you both. Do a roll call vote. I'm sorry. Claudio Campuzano.
Aye.
PJ Christopher.
He's not here.
Thank you.
He's trying to come. I just want you to know we're working to overcome some technical issues.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Annalisa Kohler.
Aye.
Jeff Noodleman.
Aye.
This is James Allison. I vote aye. The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Pen 1. And now JCA. I will entertain a motion.
This is Reed. I move that we accept the independent auditor's suggestions
Report
and
for
review
21.
for 2021.
Second.
Thank you. So roll, any discussion?
I second it.
We've got 2 seconds, Tanny and Karen. Thank you. So now roll call vote. Karen,
I vote aye.
Tanny,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Claudia. Oops. Oh, you're there. Great. That was an aye from Claudia. And Nancy Henderson, I vote aye as well. Motion passes. All 5 districts have passed the auditor's report. Thank you to auditor and financial and management teams. And thanks to all the board members. Okay, moving swiftly on. We are 15 minutes ahead. It's a record. Let's keep going. Budget adoption is next. We each have our budgets. And Ben, it looks like you are on deck for us. Go ahead.
Thank you, Nancy. Good morning, everyone. Today is a great day. We get to adopt several budgets. I will share my screen. Hopefully this will make it easy for you. And in no particular order, I don't know if we're going east to west or west to east, but what I have in front of me are 4 resolutions to prompt you. This one is for the JCA. This will adopt the budget and for the JCA. And so I'll let that board consider that and take that action.
So let me just check then. Are we, we've all, looked at the budgets and things like that, and you're just looking for a resolution at this point, or are you opening up the floor for questions?
Yeah, that's a good question. So each board has seen a proposed budget and also any altercations or alterations that the board has requested. So each board has seen each budget twice. The budget details included in your packets. Today, we are just requesting, we want to go through the process to adopt each budget and also, as applicable, the assessment amount for each district. So, and both of those things, the budget and the assessment amount will be included in each resolution. Each resolution is also included in your packets, and there have been no changes since the last time each board has seen each budget.
Thank you for that clarity. So as we're starting with JCA, I'll entertain a motion, and then if we have discussion, we'll do it after the second. So is there a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would move adoption of resolution 2022-0601, Columbia Corridor Drainage District Joint Contracting Authority, adopting budget for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Great.
That's Reed Wagner.
Yeah. Thank you, Reed. Is there any discussion?
Again, staff is happy to answer any questions.
Sounds like the staff has prepared the board well. Okay, we're going to move to a roll call vote. Let's see. So Claudio Campuzano.
Aye.
I think that was an aye. Reed Wagner.
Aye.
Tanny Stephenson.
Aye.
Karen Meyer.
Aye.
And Nancy Hendrickson, I vote aye. Motion passes. Okay, then, next district.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Pen 1. As I mentioned earlier, this is for a resolution 2022-0601, adopting the budget and also the assessment amount.
Great, thank you, Ben. Do we have a motion?
Hi, it's Jeff. I will move, make sure I get it right, to adopt resolution number 2022-06-01, adopting a budget for FY 2022-23 and authorizing a landowner assessment.
Second. How are you?
Great, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Claudio. Do a roll call vote. Claudio Campuzano.
Aye.
Annalisa Kohler.
Aye.
Jeff Noodleman.
Aye.
And this is James Allison. I vote aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to move on to Pen 2 now. And again, this is to adopt the budget and also the assessment amount.
This is Val Humble for Pen 2. Do I have a motion for Pen 2?
I move to approve resolution number 2022-06-01, adopting a budget for fiscal year 2022, 2023, and authorizing a landowner assessment.
Thank you, Eric. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Thank you, Karen. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote. Karen, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Eric, how do you vote?
Aye.
Val Humble votes aye. The motion passes unanimously for Pen 2.
Thank you. We have two more. We're going to move on to MCDD. And I just wanted to remind the board, the only change that has been made to this budget since the proposal was we increased the amount to the MCDD water line project. Other than that, all other things remain the same.
I move to approve resolution 2022-06-01, adopting a budget for fiscal year 22-23 and authorizing a landowner assessment.
This is Kenzie. I second.
Thank you. It's time for discussion, but let me just ask, do we have to say, Ben, do we have to say the assessment amount in the?
I don't believe so. It's included in the resolution.
I think just reading that title should be fine.
Okay, so we're good to go?
The resolution number is good.
Great, okay, excellent. Okay, so roll call vote. Kenzie?
Aye.
Berkey?
Aye.
This is Nancy Hendrickson. I vote aye. It's all the members present, and the resolution passes. Ben, did you say you had one more?
We have one more, SDIC. Last but not least, and just a reminder to this board, the board requested that we keep the assessment increase to 3%, which we did. That is implemented here and reflected in the budget.
Thanks, Ben. Is SDIC asking for a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Danny?
I move to approve resolution number 2022-0601, Sandy Drainage Improvement Company, adopting a budget for fiscal year 2022, 2023, and authorizing a landowner assessment.
We have a motion. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So I just want to recognize these budgets don't just materialize without the work of MCD staff, specifically Ben. Thank you for coming in, filling Casey's shoes. You know, you made it very seamless. I also want to recognize the work of our treasurer, Tanny Stephenson, you know, countless hours to pull this together. My appreciation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
No further discussion. Roll call vote. Annalise?
Aye.
Annie?
Aye.
Tom votes aye. The motion passes. Thank you.
Nice job, everybody.
If I may, thank you, Keith. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Karen, and the whole finance and budget team. Really appreciate it. And to the boards who spent so much time going over all this. Again, really appreciate all your support, you guys.
Yeah, and I will also say that this seamless passing of all these budgets, I know represents a lot of work, and the staff has prepared the board well, and the board has also asked questions in a timely way and sorted things out. So everything's working really great, and it's because of you all.
And let's acknowledge the landowners for their contributions as well. Thank you, landowners.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so now we are so far ahead of schedule, I can't even add it up. So this is great. Let's keep going. Our next piece is the administrative services and billing rates. And actually, let me just ask, can I disband JCA right now? It looks like our business is done.
I believe that's correct.
Okay,
Keith?
so go ahead, Wendy.
Oh, just clarifying with Keith, I don't believe there's any more business for JCA.
No, not from the agenda items I have.
Great.
You're welcome to hang out.
Yeah, and actually, so let me do another little change in our agenda, perhaps. Corky, I know you had an item from new business. Would you like to do that before we disband JCA? Do you mind?
Sure, be happy to. Just wanted to make note. So I'm the MCDD representative on the urban district and wanted all of you guys to understand that we've had a new seat opening on the urban district. Mike Jordan was our chair, and he has stepped away from the urban board. So we now have a new chair and Steve Fancher there. But that City of Portland seat is still open. It's vacant. If it passed, I didn't follow the city council's actions yesterday. So if it passed, then Nancy Hendrickson was appointed by city council yesterday to be the Portland representative on the urban board. Did that pass through okay, Nancy?
It did.
Good, good. No big argument, no big complaints?
No, the only problem was I couldn't get off mute, so I didn't get to say anything, but it passed through.
All right. So Nancy is now being appointed by the city. On Monday, the urban district will vote on her appointment to the urban board. I'm just sorry that I won't be there to vote for her. I think most of you folks know Nancy. She's been on the MCD board for quite a while. I've been working with her on the Watershed Council for much longer than that. But you know, the most impressive note about her really is that Mike Jordan respects her. So I'm looking forward to having her join us in the urban district.
Yep, I look forward to serving in that capacity. Another board would be great.
Yes.
Thank you for your willingness, Nancy. We appreciate you.
And I'm going to put, if anybody's interested, I'm going to put in the chat the link to the announcement of the city about the agenda item and her bio and so forth, if anybody cares to take a look.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, and thank you, Corky, for those kind words. I will, what is it? Adjourn. That's the word I'm looking for. I will adjourn the JCA. Thank you for your work today. Gavel. Okay, so we will continue with our agenda, which is the administrative services and billing rates, which looks like Keith.
Yes, thank you very much. Keith Hobson, I'm your interim CFO for your boards. Our requested actions today reflect the annual process of updating the intergovernmental agreements or IGAs between MCDD and the other drainage districts. These IGA amendments update the staff and equipment rates for work billed from MCDD to these other districts. For MCDD today, I'm going to cover all the resolutions and then we can go back and do the individual actions. For MCDD, the resolution includes multiple items. It approves the updated billing rates, which include also updated overhead rates. The rate and overhead methodology is consistent with what was reviewed at the MCDD board meeting in May. We've also updated the rates used for outside billings, and this includes our federal billing rates. The resolution also approves the 13th amendments to the IGAs with Pen 1, Pen 2, and SDIC. And the second amendment to the IGA with the Urban Flood Safety and Water Quality District. Again, these amendments are an annual procedure to adopt the updated billing rates. For the other districts, Pen 1, Pen 2, and SDIC, the resolutions only approve one action, the annual amendment to the service IGA with MCDD to approve these updated rates. For the Urban Flood Safety and Water Quality District, their agenda at their meeting next week includes a resolution to also approve the IGA amendment with MCDD. That's not relevant today, but it is closing the loop on all of these amendments. Before we move into the actions, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the resolutions or the IGA amendments themselves.
And sounds like the board is well prepared. Thank you to board and staff. last call for questions for Keith.
Yeah, Keith, one of the things I noted was that the overhead rate itself is increasing pretty significantly year to year. We're now looking at it going from 27.4% to 32.4%. That's an 18% increase. I'm trying to educate myself as to why this is up so much. So I would appreciate it if you would make available any work papers that you have associated with that so
Sure.
that I can review it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I can also give a short answer on it. Part of this is we've had staff we've never included staff costs in the overhead rate and assumed that all staff would be directly billing to the districts. We've realized in the calculation of the overhead rate, and this was discussed with the MCDD board as well, that didn't work because there were some staff that supported other staff who were direct billing that should be captured here. So the overhead rate now does include some staff costs. That should be at least partially offset with the fact that those staff may have been billing directly to the districts in the past. So you'll see a reduction in the direct billing amount and they're included in the overhead rate. So that's part of the cost of the increase on this. But again, we'd be happy to provide the detail sheets and the detailed calculations to support that.
Thank you.
Good question. I see another hand up, Tom.
Yeah, Keith, thanks for the information. Is there a look back for reconciliation for roll forward, under collection or over collection?
Specific to the overhead rate?
Correct. I mean, you go with a plan, right? And it's like you base it on projections, but do you do a prior year end close and look back and reconcile and then carry that, over collection or under collection forward?
I'm going to base this on limited knowledge. I don't believe that's the case. I certainly, Janet, if you're aware of that practice in the past, certainly correct me.
My understanding though is when we base the overhead rate, we use prior year's numbers.
So you're doing a recovery.
Yep.
Great.
Yes.
Yes, that's a good point.
Another good question. Any others? Okay, now Keith, I think we're ready to act. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see, east to west. Let's just mix it up a little bit. Pen 2, you don't get to go first very often. Why don't you go first?
Okay, for Pen 2, do we have a motion concerning our administrative services billing rates?
Well, I don't have the amendment in front of me, but I move that we approve the motion.
Let me read it then.
Thank you.
I move to approve resolution number 2022-0602, approving overhead charges and labor and equipment rates for intergovernmental agreement and approving amendments to district service intergovernmental agreements. Is that the motion you make?
Yes, it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
A second.
Is there any discussion? How do you vote, Karen?
I vote aye.
And Eric?
Aye.
Al Humble votes aye. The motion passes for Pen 2.
Thank you, Pen 2. I think we'll go SDIC next because Annalise might have to step away soon. While you have forum, go ahead.
Thanks, Nancy. Looking for a motion regarding an amendment to our IGA with MCDD.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Danny.
I move to approve resolution number 2022-0602, approving overhead charges and labor and equipment rates for intergovernmental agreements and approving amendments to district service intergovernmental agreements.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Tanny Stephenson.
Aye.
Annalise Kohler,
Aye.
and Tom Hansel votes aye. Motion passes.
Great, thank you. STIC, Pen 1, you're up next.
Nancy, do I have a motion on agenda item E, administrative services and billing rates?
I'll go ahead and move to approve resolution number 2022-06-02, approving overhead charges and labor and equipment rates for intergovernmental agreements and approving amendments to district service intergovernmental agreements.
Well done, Claudio. Do I have a second?
I'll go ahead and second, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Do a roll call vote. Claudio Campizano,
Aye.
Annalisa Kohler,
Aye.
thank you. Jeff Noodleman,
Aye.
James Allison votes aye. The motion passes. Thank you.
Great, now it's MCDD's turn. So can I get a motion?
We can do that. I move to approve resolution number 2022-06-02, approving overhead charges and labor equipment rates for intergovernmental agencies and approving amendments to district service intergovernmental agreements.
And I'll second.
Great, any discussion? Okay, roll call votes. Corky,
Aye.
Kinsey,
Aye.
Nancy, I vote aye. The motion passes unanimously. I believe that's all of us, correct? Great, okay. Next on our agenda is the capital improvement plan, and here to talk about it is Bill Owen.
Thanks, Nancy. It's still morning, 11:57. So good morning. I have provided copies of the final capital improvement, 5-year capital improvement plans for each of your districts. The only change made were references to footnotes in Appendix A to clarify the CIP ranking and some references to external funding, particularly in STIC. So otherwise, the numbers stay as they were from your last review of them last month. So I suppose we can go through each district unless there's some initial questions. Okay, hearing none, let's start with STIC.
STIC is looking for a motion regarding our capital improvement plan.
Chair. I move to adopt resolution 2022-06-03, adopting a 5-year capital improvement plan.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Annalise,
Aye.
Penny Stephenson,
Aye.
Tom Hansel votes aye. Motion passes.
Excellent work, under the wire for quorum. Good job, everyone. We'll see you, Annalise, when you come back. And let's see, who wants to go next? How about Pen 1?
Thank you, Nancy, for keeping us on our toes. Prior to calling for a motion, I just want to recognize the staff in bringing not just the annual budget, but the capital budget to us months in advance so that this activity today works more like clockwork. It's much appreciated. I also want to recognize the board members and their organizations for bringing extra resources to the Pen 1 budget so that we can meet our capital improvement plan aspirations and requirements. It's a very big and heartfelt thank you as we head into another fiscal year. So with that, I'm looking for a motion on agenda item F, capital improvement plan.
I'll go ahead and I echo James's comments, working with everybody and, you hate to be a Me Tooer, but Jim talked about, all the staff, Janet, I've worked with Janet for, I don't know how many years, so it's just such a pleasure to be able to, and I guess sometimes that's why it's so silent. It's not like we're not all paying attention, It's just because the staff does such an incredible job of preparing us ahead of time that we just say, cool, looks great. So thanks. So I do move to approve resolution number, for Pen 1, 2022-06-03, adopting a 5-year capital improvement plan.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have a second?
Second, Claudio.
Thank you, Claudio. Roll call vote. Claudio Capisano,
Aye.
Annalisa Kohler. Don't see Annalisa. I think she maybe had to go
Had
to
to step
another.
away.
Okay. And Jeff Noodleman
Aye.
and James Allison votes aye. With 3 votes, that passes. Thank you again.
Great, and Pen 2.
For Pen 2, do I have a motion to accept the capital improvement plan?
I move to approve resolution number 2022-06-03, adopting a 5-year capital improvement plan.
Thank you, Eric. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, Val, I've got a couple of questions. As the newest member of the Pen 2 board, I'm certain that you guys have already discussed these elements, but also as a member of the community action group that is associated with the interstate bridge replacement, I'm particularly struck by the impact of the IBR on the cross levy. And with the planning for the interstate bridge replacement in its current state, do we really understand what actions are going to be required of us versus ODOT to repair that low point in the levee?
My expectation was going to be that would come up under the PED that's not yet done. Who am I hearing wanting to comment?
Yeah, I was going to comment unless another board member wanted to initially. So I appreciate the question. MCD staff on behalf of Pen 2 has been meeting with the IBR project team. In fact, as of I think just yesterday afternoon was the latest meeting. And yes, it's a bit of a dance to make sure that both the PMLS work and recommended project work and the IBR recommendations mesh well together. And so you should be confident that our staff is aware of those and has been actively engaging, well, certainly with the PMLS group for years and the IBR team for several months, if not over a year. And just as of yesterday, we drove down to details like, well, how much space do we actually need between the top of the levee and the bottom of the bridge that's being proposed. So those are the type of conversations we're already having with the IBR team, and they haven't even given us their 30% design yet. And really it's at that 30% design level where we have some meat, if you will, to really start digging in to those design details and making sure Pen 2's interests are considered and they match up well with the PMLS interests. Of course, not only the levee underneath the bridge, but also, as you allude to, the cross levee with Pen 1 and Pen 2 is also on our radar. So, yep, we're aware of it. The capital program's a little odd in this agency because the levies themselves are not owned by the districts. They're, in most cases, we don't own the land, so it doesn't necessarily meet the classical definition of a capital assets, and so you don't see those on the CIP, but know that we are actively engaged in them. So it is, I see Evan's hand up too. I think she may be able to add a couple other comments.
Yeah, just a couple of things, mostly because Bill was being our fearless leader for the current high water event and couldn't join the meeting yesterday. but we, just yesterday at 4 o'clock, we talked specifically about design for the first time now that they're sort of moving towards their locally preferred alternative. And over the next couple of months, they're going to be developing their NEPA documents, and we'll be working hand in hand with our engineering team to make sure that they fully understand and integrate the needs of the levies. And then on top of that, they also have to work with the Corps through the 408 process because they're building on a federally authorized levy system. And so even though we're confident we'll get our needs met through that process, the Corps is another check to make sure that we're fully integrated. The other thing that I was very relieved about was that when we were talking about process and timeline, it sounded like our design timelines, at least as we understand them now, align really well. So I know Colin, I don't see Kevin on the line, but Colin was there as well. So if there's anything else you would add, Colin. But I felt a lot better after that meeting, really understanding their design timeline, and it really does align well with the PMLS.
Well, is it your understanding that with the change in the design for the interstate bridge and MLK Marine Drive interchange that we will still need to increase the height of the levee when ODOT dug it out too much?
I don't want to put words in their mouths, but I felt very, it seems like they recognize that they're going to have to they're going to be rebuilding that section. And they very, very clearly said, okay, we understand it needs to be 38 feet. We understand it needs to be 38 feet. And the Corps also, essentially the way that they function now that the PMLS is signed is that is the expectation for the future. So they will also hold them to that. And they need Corps authorization to be able to proceed.
So for this subject area, when we think about the requirements of Pen 1 and Pen 2 to fund that, what is your sense? Is this a future liability or a future capital expenditure that Pen 1 and Pen 2 should be aware of? Should we be planning to spend significant money there?
You know, that's a complicated question that these boards grapple with a lot, because when that project is going to be completed, at least according to all the plans that we have now, we're going to be under the new district. But that is a certification project. It is still something that we need to complete. Neither the PMLS or the IBR project have secure funding, but they're both on very, very good pathways. Mm-hmm. And so we don't have anything documented yet that says that they're going to pay for it, but all indications are that as long as that project proceeds, they are going to figure out, at least for that section, they're going to have to redesign that section, which means hitting the levels that the height that we.
Right. Got it. Thank you very much. I think that that's about as much as we can expect for this period when the design is in flux and we haven't even started the 408 process with the Corps of Engineers. So, but I wanted you to just give us a sense of the relative range of commitment that they have to pay. Thank you.
I think it's just fair to reiterate that all the agencies are aware of the need to protect the flood safety system as we work through these projects, and they're all paying attention.
Good.
So Pen 2, I think you're still on board to pass the resolution.
Val, you're muted.
So Val, maybe we need to go to a roll call vote.
I think he thought he did, but he's muted. You're muted, Val.
Too many options here. I thought I was talking to the folks and I was talking to myself. So N2 has a motion pending to adopt the capital improvement plan. Karen, how do you vote? You're also muted now.
Okay, now I vote aye.
Thank you. Eric
Aye.
and Val Humble votes aye. The motion passes for Pen 2.
Thank you. Yeah, lots of moving pieces going on, and it sounds like the agencies are working well together, which is really good. Chair recognizes Tom Hansel.
Yeah, I just want to recognize Annalise signed off, and with that, SDIC is adjourned, no longer in quorum. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're on our last district for this agenda item is MCDD, the capital improvement plan. Can I get a motion?
Sure, I'll jump in because we've heard some nice comments about the work on this. And, you know, staff generally always does a very, very nice job on things. This year on the capital improvement plan, it was just a notch up. So kudos to everybody involved in that. Bill, Janet, I mean, it really nice presentation on it. I move to approve resolution number 2022-06-03, adopting a 5-year capital improvement plan.
This is Kenzie, I second.
Great. Roll call vote. Kenzie Berry.
Aye.
Vicky Collier. Corky, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Nancy Hendrickson also votes aye. And I echo Corky's comments. Really good job. And also, I can't remember who said it, but there has been a lot of silence today, and it is because we have been paying attention and the staff has prepared us very well. It's a very engaged board, and I've definitely been there when there's been question after question after question. And so it's a testament to how well staff has pulled everything together this year and given us timely information, and that we are able to act on it so in such a streamlined way. So,
Thank you all.
Thank you, Bill.
yes, kudos to everybody. We do have another agenda item. It does not look like we need to take action on it, but it is a presentation about administrative efficiencies.
Thank you very much. I'll pause for a second here so we can pull up a presentation. Emily, are you driving? Okay. Great, thank you, Emily. So if we could just move to the second slide. In the interest of trying to simplify existing operations and find staff efficiencies, we've looked at the existing process for tracking staff and equipment time being billed from MCDD to the other districts. We want to share one of our findings and possibly a recommendation for change with you. We'll cover this in 4 parts. We'll do a quick overview of the existing practice and some of the steps we've taken to date within that existing practice. We do want to share a new option with you for consideration. And then based on your level of support for pursuing this new option, what next steps might look like. So if we can move, next slide. So this flow chart, you've seen it before. It's actually from a resources overview presented by Ben to your boards in February. Our focus today is really on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th boxes. Each month, we compile staff and equipment time, and you just approved the IGA amendments to update those rates. We do this monthly. We apply the approved rates and calculate a monthly billing amount from MCDD to each of the districts. This is a very detail-oriented process that's predominantly done manually and compiled using Excel spreadsheets. There are 3 categories of this billing. One is administrative costs. The administrative includes support services like board support, purchasing, finance and budget, information technology, and any other central services. Maintenance work includes routine inspections and field work. And then finally, in addition, there's project work, and project could be specific items that are non-routine, non-recurring, and could be either capital or non-capital. So the next slide. Well, the current process has worked for many years. There are some issues with it that are causing us to consider an alternate approach. Since the process is a manual process, it's very staff labor intensive, not only for the finance staff, but for the staff in other departments doing the work who have to track and compile this information. Let's see. We're estimating the impact across all staff involved is approximately 150 to 200 hours each month. That equates to an FTE of staff time, which is significant to an agency our size. Our review of the current method is, despite the level of detail in the billings, it's still leaving some gaps in recovery, which equates to a subsidy by MCDD. Also, in our current budget process, we create a balanced budget between MCDD revenues and the expenses in the other districts. And this requires estimation. And when we're doing this estimation, we don't know what the actual hours will be in the upcoming year. So typically in budgeting, you would budget conservatively, and that doesn't work well in this process, because if we estimate too high, we risk having an MCDD revenue shortfall. So to be conservative for MCDD, we would want to estimate low on the budget amount. However, if we estimate low, we have the corresponding risk of an over expenditure by the other districts. So having more certainty of costs in the budget process would help ensure we don't have either under recovery of revenue or over expenditure of costs. We've taken a few intermediary steps to address some of these issues. MCDD and the urban boards have approved an IGA amendment that allows us to directly charge a set percentage of the cost for certain designated staff positions directly to the urban district, rather than trying to capture this through detailed time records. The cost for staff time for other than the designated positions is still captured through the detail records. This works well for the urban boards. Partly, we don't have a long history of what our billings are, and we have fairly defined staff who are working extensively on that work, and the percentage of their time being allocated there. We talked about this earlier this meeting. We've reviewed our overhead rate calculation and made some modifications. In addition to the staff changes that I mentioned already, we've actually deleted some costs from the overhead pool where we felt the costs were more MCDD specific or might be being replicated in the other districts. So we've done refinements that we think have improved the overhead pool. So we do want to explore a more significant modification that would have more meaningful impact on operations efficiency. And this would be to replace the detailed calculation of our monthly billings for maintenance and administrative costs with a fixed billing amount. These two components were selected because they're relatively stable year over year, and the time spent on projects would still be billed based on detailed time and rates. So all the work you just did to approve all those rates and charges is still valuable, even if we move to a fixed billing for administrative and maintenance costs. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Ben Rowe to walk through some of our calculations and a possible method for calculating this.
So what we did is we looked back 5 years in each district, and we looked at the actual time and materials that were logged in those timesheets that Keith mentioned for administrative costs and also for maintenance costs. So this is an example of Pen 1. And again, it has 5 years of actual history. And I want to mention here that in 2020, because of the health precautions that we took, we actually had a dip in the administration and maintenance costs that were logged. And so we normalized that year in each of the districts to follow the same trend line that we identified in the 5 years of history. So as Keith mentioned, I just want to confirm that really quick. The administration costs represent time and materials logged by staff dedicated to IT, HR, finance, those sorts of costs, and also direct costs allocated to each district. And then the maintenance, as it implies, are the time and materials dedicated to the maintenance services provided in each district. And these two things combined represent the total admin costs charged to each district. One thing that we're not showing on this chart are the staff time spent on specific projects that reside in each district. We're just focusing on the non-project work here. So again, we identified the trend line in the past 5 years, and we forecasted that trend line for both of those costs, admin and maintenance, forward for the next 5 years. Again, this would be a proposal. These two items combined would be the total admin cost that we would propose to assess each district on an annual basis through equal monthly payments. So if we go to the next slide, we can see Pen 2, I believe it's going to be. Similar story here. Each district is slightly unique in that they have their own trend line over the past 5 years. And again, we just extrapolated that to forecast out what those costs might be over the next 5 years. And then finally, we have SDIC, I believe. Thank you. As I mentioned, slightly different trend in each district. And then finally, we included this in our memo. On the next slide is just a summary of all those costs, what we provided for you. Emily, if you don't mind going to the next slide, we provided for you the actual admin costs in 2021. That is the most recent year that we have actual costs for those admin fees and also the system maintenance. We've also included for you the 2023 budget. And as Keith mentioned, that 2023 budget is just an estimation of what those fees might be for each district and the corresponding revenue in MCDD. As Keith mentioned, it's an estimation, and we want to make sure that ideally we would budget conservatively to ensure that there's enough revenue in MCDD to cover our actual admin and maintenance costs. We don't know in 2022, we don't know exactly what those fees will be because the year is not complete. And also this is just an estimation in 2023 of what those fees could be. What we've compared those with is, again, the fixed fees that we would propose under this scenario, following that trend line based on the 5 years of history. And you can see those fees for 2 districts go up slightly, and for 1 district go down slightly. And again, this is all included in the memo we provided. And correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, but I think I'm going to turn the time back over to you for the next 2 slides.
Yep, that's correct. Thank you, Ben. So if we opt to pursue this approach, we've established some metrics that we think should guide the details of this. First is the amount set for the fixed billings must be understandable and accepted as fair by both MCDD and the other districts. We are cognizant that this approach has a limited life given the reorganization and the stand-up of the new district. So it must provide efficiency in terms of reducing staff time, or it's simply not worth implementing this kind of change. And because of that limited life also, the implementation has to be simple enough that the effort required to make the change doesn't eliminate our potential benefits. As an example, we could come up with a very complex method of calculating a fixed fee, but given the limited time it would be in place, it just wouldn't be worth making that change. So next slide, please. So if there's an interest in moving forward with this approach, or at least continuing to explore it, we anticipate a multi-step process. Staff would solidify the details that need to be addressed in a future IGA amendment. Issues could include the method of calculating the fixed fee, the timing of billing and collections, and also service levels that are included in the fixed fees versus being billed as extra project work. I want to say in terms of calculating the fixed amount, we've given you one option, which is just based on a trend line aggregate of the past 5 years. If there's an interest in this approach, but a discomfort with that method, we could look at an alternate method. But again, we'd want to make sure the method of calculation is simple enough that the complexity of it doesn't overwhelm any benefit. Once we've worked out the details, staff would share the proposed implementation details with all of your boards to ensure there's agreement on what the terms of an IGA amendment would look like. And then the final step would be to bring an IGA amendment for board approval to actually implement this change. That's a lot of information and a very high level overview. So at this point, we're interested in your thoughts or questions, and then any thoughts or feedback you have on this concept.
And just one comment from me, which is, if something crazy happens and makes the 5-year trend not an appropriate way of it divvying up costs, we would obviously come back to you all and address whatever unexpected or rare event happened and come to a consensus with all of you about how we would bill for that appropriately. So again, the board retains the power to adjust along the way. That's all.
Okay, so I see Val's hand up first and Claudio after.
This does sound like a very intelligent thing to do. It seems like a very positive step. I do have two concerns. One is the characterization of things as projects. It's hard for me to assess what that means without seeing our past charges that were projects and what the project was. So I find it very difficult to evaluate this without knowing how much we paid for project work or stuff that would be under the new procedure categorized as projects. The second concern relates to the savings. I didn't notice anywhere where you were sharing that savings with us. What's the story on that?
I'll start with that. In terms of the projects, one of the reasons we've excluded projects from the fixed billing is the variability. It is very dependent. You know, there could be a very large capital project in one district in a given year that causes it to skew up higher. We can certainly provide the history on projects, but again, our thought is the projects don't provide predictability over what future costs can be. It's going to be dependent on what the projects are in the districts in future years. So, but it's information we have, and we'd be happy to share it.
It's more so I can understand what qualifies as a project.
Okay, yeah, that's good information as well. In terms of sharing the savings on this, the reality is we have a lot of work on the administrative side to do to get ready to stand up the new district, and what we're looking at here is any benefit from the change in this approach would really allow us to redirect staff into getting that done rather than having to add staff to be able to do that additional work. The efficiencies gained, the benefits we see to the other districts are not as much financial as more assurance that in the budget numbers we presented, I think past practice, not every year, but past practice, many years, the actual cost billed are higher than the budget. With this approach, you will have predictability and assurance that the costs being budgeted and being billed under the fixed billing amount represent what's there. So it's not anticipated in the approach that we would discount in order to share the savings. But if that's a component that has to be included in here, we could certainly look at that. So.
Thank you.
Claudio and then Eric after that.
Great, thanks. I've got a couple of comments, a couple of questions, but thank you for this. It's a really wonky topic that you guys did a great job explaining pretty succinctly and helping us understand sort of how and why it's relevant. So really appreciate that. I just want to note, and I think you got to it a little bit in the presentation. Just want to make sure that everybody understands that it sounds like what's being proposed can only really work in the short-term interim until the urban district. You don't seem to have anything in place to update the allocation methodology. It's really based on historicals, and it doesn't sound like we're planning on updating that. And we're just going to sort of project out over the next couple of years and assume the transition, which I think we all are assuming. But I just think it's important to sort of like acknowledge that, or that we would need some sort of methodology update on a regular cadence otherwise, right? And then just a question. I followed all the way along until using historicals to sort of get a sense of the relative impact or the relative use of service. I didn't quite follow that leading to a fixed fee going forward, projecting the fixed fee going forward. Did you explore the idea of that generating a fixed allocation across the districts and then looking at your cost pool on an annual basis and allocating it based on the utilization in the past? Because otherwise you're sort of creating a constraint based on resource rather than on requirement need. So, and then the last question I have is, it sounds like, looking backwards, there's relatively stable utilization across districts, and I would just want to confirm that's been the case over the last several years, over the period that you're looking at. Because if there isn't that stability of utilization, then this method may not work particularly well, because that would imply that sometimes people need more administration or need more maintenance than others. And if we back away from that, there may be some disparate impacts. So just those couple of thoughts and questions.
Yeah, I'll just, I know that we're piling up several questions, so I'll try and be brief here. We did look backwards. Quite honestly, it was the lowest threshold to being able to implement this. It was the easiest way to get it done. We could take a more granular approach and look at the components and the time and a percentage of staff time. I'm just concerned that the complexity of taking that approach, which I totally agree would be the more accurate way to do it, look at the allocation percentages and apply them to future costs, unless we had very broad allocation bases. Trying to do it at a very granular level, the work required to do that calculation and then update that each year with the cost pools, I think makes the benefits of this not worth it. Again, we're in a limited life, so we can keep doing what we've been doing for the 2 to 3 years that we anticipate this happening, and there's no problem with that. If we want to look at this alternate method, it's got to be done in a way that's simple enough it's worth implementing. Otherwise, we just continue on with what we're doing. So, yeah, I just want to be really candid that we took a very simplified calculation approach, but I think that's the only way this makes sense. And it doesn't have to be how we've done it, but whatever we would implement would have to follow that same logic. I don't know if I caught if I missed any of your other questions.
There's really just the question about stability. The utilization of admin and maintenance services. Has that been? I think you mentioned that as one of the criteria for selecting these two as potentially being targets for this type of model. So I just wanted to confirm that indeed, like you've seen that relatively stable ratio of utilization across the districts.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that it is why we picked those. We feel like there is going back 5 years, it gives us a long enough history that if there's any variations, we've hopefully smoothed that out into more standardized allocations. If there's something if something is changing that's unique that would cause a significant change, that's where we would look to projects and say this is above the normal service levels, therefore we need to create a project for this cost. And it doesn't have to be just capital projects. It could be a non-capital project to capture a specific element of work that we want to identify over and above the base service levels.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so Eric and James is next.
So first of all, thank you. This is an important change to our process and one that hopefully will get us some additional resources so that we can have a very smooth transition to the unified district. One of the first questions I have is really that we all be aware that the spending at each level has to be authorized. It has to be part of the mandate for our individual organizations. So for example, as a member of the urban board, I would say that the work and the money being spent in terms of equity and our watershed plan is really the urban board's responsibility. That's clearly part of their mandate. And I would want to ensure that it's not getting charged to Penn 2 through sort of a backdoor allocation. So making certain that that governance issue is one of the things that I would like to address working with you as we go to move forward. The second is really to ensure that the growth in this is predictable. And if you look at the Penn 2 maintenance charges, what has happened in the past and what is projected in the future, you find that for the period of 2017 through 2021, the actual has been growing at a compound annual growth rate of 5.2%, and the projection is 5.4%. So that, to my mind, says that this is a really good fit and trend line and that we have it. If there are other elements that are in there that don't fit that trend line, that move dramatically in turn or to a certain extent off of it, then I'd have to step back and say, no, wait a second, is this really an appropriate mechanism? So for example, again, looking at Penn 2, the administrative charge, the actual has gone up by 10.5% on a compound annual growth rate for the period 17 through 21. But the growth actually declines in the future. It's only 8.3%. So I want us to go back and take a look at that and see if the past really is a good predictor of the future. And obviously, one thing that I think is absolutely clear is that the base spending that we're projecting this off of is accurate, and I have no reason not to believe that it is. Okay, so
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was making notes. I think I heard several suggestions and recommendations. I didn't capture a specific question, but if there was one.
right.
Yeah.
So it's just making certain that we have the appropriate governance, that it be in the mandate of the organization that's responsible for it. Number two is that I really want you and Ben to go back and take a look at your projection and ensure that it is growing at a rate that is, something that the past would suggest. Because in the case of Penn 2, I think maintenance is dead on, and it'd be a significant improvement in our process and free up resources. But in the administrative charge, I'd like to look at that further with you and work with you on that.
Okay. Yeah.
So it sounds like some future action will be happening there, future coordination between the board and Keith. And James, you are up next.
Thank you. I think just a few quick points. First, thank you for presenting a clear need and a rational case for doing this. Secondly, I don't know if this is helpful to any of the boards, but since this is a departure from the way we normally pay, analyze, and charge for services, it may be worth, if it's easy, to build in some sort of kicker approach. For example, if there's a overshoot, a large discrepancy between revenue collected and expenses. That might make the boards, or even just a report on that might be helpful. The trend line for administrative services for Penn 1 seems very reasonable. And all the services provided by MCDD to Penn 1 are of great value. So I have no comment about the value of those services. The trend line for maintenance is steeper, of course. And the only point I want to make is that, as you know, City of Portland does its budgeting over the summer. We make our requests typically in October. There's a long budget process to approval, but we need to know pretty early in our fiscal year, which is the shared fiscal year that you folks have, what the request is going to be for the following year. So we can't really turn, if we're looking at a $30,000 increase to City of Portland's IGA, the number itself is very manageable. To do that late in the fiscal year, that type of request for the next fiscal year is more problematic. Just want to put that out there in terms of the timing. Thank you.
And Keith, did you have a response to that? Everyone's needed.
No, I think the concept of looking at, if we're basing this on a trend line and then we see a deflection in costs, that they just don't go up as fast or go down, I think that's a really interesting thing to look at and say that, the intent on this is not to accumulate funds in MCDD. It's just to simplify effectively what we've been doing. So I think if we see something like that, I think that would be a reasonable safeguard to build in here too, that we're intending to capture anticipated activity levels. If they change, then we've got to address that. And then as far as the City of Portland, we'd have to work through any transition if this gets implemented next year. Other than that, I think it would be great in the sense that, with the trend line approach, we can tell you over the next 2 years what the billing amounts would look like. So I think it would really help that scenario on it.
Good notes. Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. Keith, appreciate the different approach. I just do want to recognize SDIC only has 2 of their 4 members here. So I guess I'm going to ask if we could have this discussion at a SDIC board meeting, just to be thorough. Both Ken and Annalise are absent, so.
Yeah, and I just want to stress, we wanted to introduce this idea, just sort of get a sense of warmth or cold. And if there's some interest here, we think there's a couple of months of effort and interactions with boards before we'd be ready to propose anything for adoption. And I think, Tammy's asking some questions before this. And so we'd want to dig in and make sure people were comfortable. And I do like the idea of having some policy mechanism to trigger an adjustment conversation if things get weird. I think that's essential. And just to highlight the objective here is we're spending an awful lot of administrative time for the last 2 years or so. And what we'd really rather do is dispatch our team to dissolution planning and revenue development and some of the other things that are really hard to do in the midst of the current operations. So, but the way we're doing it is okay. And we're getting clean audits. And if the board doesn't feel comfortable with it, let's not do it. And let's not waste time thinking about it. Let's hold the status quo. We'll get through it. We're fine. So I just want to make sure you're kind of with us in terms of the relative importance. This is an opportunity, but we want to be mindful of the impact and the transparency and other things that go with it. It's really important to us that you feel confident.
Karen, are you raising your hand?
I am. Just a quick comment. I think what Keith has presented makes a lot of sense to me. For 2 years, we don't need to spend a lot of time fussing about the ins and outs and how to do it. It seems like his staff has already done a lot of research on it to make it come out pretty even. Over 100 hours a month spent. That's a lot of man hours that could be used for something else. As long as there's not thousands and thousands of dollars going into somebody's personal pocket, I would strongly endorse what he's presented.
Yeah, thanks, Karen, and you're getting some thumbs up as well. We're all for simplicity, fairness, of course, and simplicity as well. I think both of those are really important.
So I think that that Eric Molander would like a follow-up conversation. I think Tanny would like a follow-up conversation. It seems like it might be worth a conversation with you, Claudio. Are there other board members that would like us to meet with you individually, or would you like us to try and join you together? As long as you're not in some funky quorum that violates public notice laws, we'd be happy to spend time with you individually or in small groups to explain all of this and make sure all your questions are answered and if there's a path forward here. And if there isn't, again, I want to stress, it's okay. I do think there's an opportunity here to use landowners' money more effectively.
Okay, James, you're up, and then Val. And I'm just going to give us a time check. We've got 9 minutes before our next agenda item.
Just quickly, Jim, thanks for the question. I don't need any kind of one-on-one or meeting to further discuss this, but I know we've got 3 board members right now, Penn 1, who aren't here. So I think it's just understanding. I assume that we would get something in a board packet, and would we vote on it? This isn't really a resolution. Would this be a resolution, or would it just be we would agree that in the next IGA, this is the methodology we would use, and here's how it would impact the IGA? What's the order of operations, I guess?
Or we would amend the IGA mid-year.
Yes.
Again, depending on board direction, right? So it could be any of those things. Again, we want to be mindful that the savings won't be worth a lot the longer we wait, or the more complicated we make it, which again, perfectly okay to have it be complicated because we owe the landowners transparency over how we're using their money. So.
Okay, yeah. And so James, did you get your comment addressed?
I did. I haven't lowered my hand yet. So I think just please do what you always do, which is give the board a good primer in the packet. Wendy's been great at calling out in her emailing the packet if there's something specific she wants board members to look at ahead of time. I can't speak for the other Penn 1 board members. I think it will suffice for them to know that this decision is coming. If there's anything I can do to help with informing the Penn 1 board members, just contact me offline.
So, and I want to let Val talk. It seems like what we would want to do is probably meet with some of the individuals who have some really helpful tips, refine our thinking, and probably go to each individual board and then come to a format. That sounds like that would probably be the most appropriate process, depending on the feedback we get from the individuals. And I'm grateful to those of you with finance backgrounds being interested in this, because I think you will help us get it right. I'm sorry, Val, to not let you speak.
And I assume you are now? Okay, I don't need an individual consultation, but I would like to see information about what would have been projects in the past. I'm now having a little bit of difficulty understanding what qualifies as projects over standard administration and maintenance. So if we could see those charts again, showing also how much was spent on projects, that would help me understand the budget overall. Thank you.
I'm going to go on a flyer here. I think a project might be the Bridgeton levee repair. I think the discharge pipes repair project would also be another example of a Penn 2 project that would be separately accounted for.
That would have been my understanding as well. I just wanted it to be confirmed by actually seeing what yeah.
And we'll pull a more thorough list for you too. And that could be part of this conversation about what things cross over into a project and what things fall into that general maintenance or administration. And I think we're going to slice up a continuum on that at some level.
Thank you.
So thanks for bringing this up, having this initial presentation. And it sounds like you have additional information for us. And then there's a future board action that we are looking forward to, based on what you hear from everybody.
Yeah, or we'll come back and say, we've met with some of your smart financial brains, and guess what? It's not worth it. We're not going to do it, which could happen too. And again, I want to stress that would be fine. We're doing okay. We're just really, honestly, trying to really make the best use of the resources that we have available to us to achieve the investments in the system that will keep us safe. So
team it up, future board action or non-action.
Or update. If any of the rest of you decide you'd like more individual attention or small group attention, please let me know and we'll make sure that that happens.
Yeah, everyone reach out to Wendy, reach out to Jim.
Yep.
They're there for us. So Keith, is that
That's it. Thank you for all your feedback. We've got a lot to unpack as we look at how this could work, and we look forward to those future discussions. So thank you.
okay? New business. 5 minutes early, still doing good. So new business informational items. Bill, I think you have something.
I do. I can provide a very brief update on the high water event that's going on right now. Emily, do I have access to share my screen? Or someone else does. Excellent. All right, very good. So this is a image of the National Weather Service's River Forecast Center's outlook for the Columbia River. Right in the middle of the graphic, which is in blue, is the current time, 12 o'clock on today. Line to the left, the blue line to the left is what has happened, the water levels prior to this point, and the purplish line to the right is the forecasted flow based on information they've collected throughout. I wanted to give you, so first off, we've been hovering around 16 feet at the Vancouver gauge, which is what our reservoir operations partners have informed us would likely happen. You can see they're projected to start going down over the weekend. I've been fooled before. Sometimes they keep it up a little bit higher for a little bit, but we're supposed to be under the action level at 15 by early next, it looks like by Monday or so. So so if you look online and saw this, you can see different thresholds that the National Weather Service has determined and color coded here: action, minor, and moderate, which is yellow, orange, and red. Those are levels that they've identified based on regional interests in our area. But MCDD has identified slightly different action levels. And so both of us start at the stage at 15. So up to 15, our standard operations occur. But between 15 and 17.2 is we've boosted our operations for emergency response. And that includes weekly levee inspections, among other things. But at 17.2, that's approximately the point where graphic packaging over in Pen 1 needs to close off their outfall gauge or slide gates, so the water doesn't come back into their building. From that point up to 21 and a half, we were ramping up our inspection protocols and so forth. But at 21 and a half, that's approximately the point where a couple of marinas and MCDD in particular, and Chinook Landing out closer to SDIC, they start getting inundated with water from the Columbia. And really after 21.5 is when we're in full emergency activation, doing daily checks and so forth. Just as a note, we don't install the Pen 1 flood wall until level 23. And so it's a far cry from what we're at now. But at 23, we install that flood wall that goes across Marine Drive and start voluntary evacuations in Pen 1. And as water levels continue on up, we continue recommendations or voluntary evacuations for Pen 2 and others as we get higher. So this is a snapshot of what we're looking for in the coming days, over the weekend and early next week, and how we act. Our trigger levels are slightly different than the weather services. I see Corky's hand up. I'm not sure if anyone else has.
Yeah, Bill, Blue Lake is having some very minor flooding. A little bit of yard flooding, decks underwater. They're not on our system at all, are they? Just want to confirm that. I don't think there's any connection with them in our system at all. But I want to
You know, they do actually have a hydraulic connection with SDIC. So the gate tower and the drainage pipes that allow water to go from west to east from MCDD into SDIC is really the outflow from Blue Lake.
Okay, thanks. That's not the answer I expected, but good to know. Thank you.
Okay. So I can't see if there's any other hands up.
There's no other hands up now. So if we're missing you, go ahead and go off mic and start talking.
So don't see any hands. I just want to give a shout out to Bill and Colin and the operations team. And in fact, Bill activated our incident management team. And so we were, again, in those enhanced operations through the weekend and currently. And I just appreciate Bill's leadership. We had operations team members come in on a day off to help. They were on call, but they still came in. And a lot of the admin team did extra work on top of their normal duties to make sure that we were monitoring the situation effectively and communicating with stakeholders and partner agencies. So Bill, thanks for your leadership.
Yep, you're welcome. And anyone's welcome to reach out to me directly if you have any questions later.
Yep, it's a 24/7 operation when you need to watch those levels. So thank you for all that work. Water doesn't take a weekend off.
And I think it's worth noting for you all that there's a lot of snowpack in the upper basin. And if we have a real warm spell, we could see flows continuing or potentially rising. And if you haven't availed yourself of some of the coverage at Yellowstone, please do so.
No, I think that is it. Well, let me ask, are there any more new business or agenda or informational items?
Evan, can I put you on the spot just to give a 2 or 3 sentence update on the polling? I know more to come.
Sure. That was not what I thought you were going to ask me about. I thought you were going to ask me to tell them the good news about WRDA and that our PMLS project was in the both the Senate and the House version. And so it looks like we're on really good track. But yes, we just got the results back from the poll that the urban district put into the field. And we are waiting on summary slides, which we're happy to send out to all the boards. They will be presented to the urban district board on Monday. Our pollster is going to come and do about 30 minutes with the urban district. I just got a preview, and Colin and I both got a preview of that presentation tomorrow or yesterday. I think the big thing to note is, well, there's a couple of really interesting things, but the big thing that I walked away with just feeling really good about is that we have, at least for a squishy sort of soft description of a geobond, we've got 66% support. So that's a really, really great place to be starting with the idea, with the concept. The sort of interesting thing that I think we'll need to dig into a little bit more over the summer when we do continued research is folks in the community did not prioritize flood safety in terms of the things that they're concerned about and the various kind of natural disasters that they're worrying about. But they do support up to $84 a year for this sort of general world of stuff that they're paying for. The other thing that I was really interested in is, we've often led with a very economic centered message. And that was really not the messaging that resonated. The message that the top message overall consistently across the board was about drinking water, the backup drinking water supply. And when he said that, I was like, oh, duh, that makes perfect sense. But that was the top message. Closely followed with, some, depending on how the question was framed, there's a lot of interest and personal feelings about the impacts of climate change. And I think we're gonna need to dig into that one more, because there's something there with severe weather, but not flooding. So we got a little more work to do there, but it's really interesting. And I'm blanking on what the third one was. Obviously, I'm just getting into this stuff. So we'll definitely share we'll share the results. And if you want to see the crosstabs, you're more than welcome to dig into them. But we will definitely share the summary slides with everybody as soon as we get them. And then Wendy does an amazing job of getting the meeting minutes and the recording up really quickly. So you'll be able to watch what our pollster presents to the urban district pretty quickly after Monday.
Yeah,
So
you guys
that's a
are all
great-
welcome to attend on Monday if you'd like.
Yeah.
So there's a path forward, y'all.
So Evan, just a request. I mean, having a 9-day high water event this late in the season is, to my mind, pretty remarkable. And it is an impact of climate change. So being able to demonstrate to the public that we're being proactive about it is really important. I don't know what our history has been in terms of this late into the summer, having this significant kind of high water, but this might be one of the things that would help a member of the public that is only casually aware of our services to begin to understand what we do.
Yeah, and we can often, or we can also share the media coverage that we have gotten so far. We have been in touch with the press and communicating out about this. I think it'll be very informative to have the pollster walk through this on Monday, because the things that we really think about and care deeply about and are just so intimately aware of as residents and people who work in the managed floodplain, just that's not what we saw for people outside of the managed floodplain. They're thinking about this very differently, which makes sense. They're connecting to the things that matter to them, which was, making sure they have drinking water and thinking about the environment connection. That was the third one I missed, was the connections to the environment and habitat. And so it'll be interesting to figure out, our post, we have a really great team of posters. They're going to do a great job of helping us figure out some of that messaging going forward. But
Do you think it's worth noting that we're thinking about it because it's important, and the fact that others aren't thinking about it doesn't diminish its importance. It just influences how we talk to people so that we can meet them where they are and help them understand the investments we need to make. So just want to stress that to you all. Flood safety is our purpose, our mission, our expertise, and we're focused on it like a laser. And this polling helps us persuade others to invest in what they need, even if they don't know it.
So, okay.
I was just going to say, excellent summary, Jim. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing it home for us, Evan. Kenzie has actually put 2 things in the chat for future follow-up. And so Wendy, I assume you're noting those, and thank you. And I would just like to say we are at our meeting's end, everyone. We got through lots of business and some really good discussions. So I'd like to ask each, SDIC is already adjourned, and JCA, so Pen 1, would you like to adjourn?
Yeah, thank you, Nancy, for facilitating today. Thank you to all the board members. Thank you to the staff. Pen 1 is adjourned.
And Pen 2?
Pen 2 is also adjourned with great gratitude for all your staff and support.
And MCD is also adjourned. Yes, lots of gratitude. And for this very important work. Keep our community safe.
Thanks for your service, board members.
Okay, give yourselves a clap and get off the meeting. Bye.
All right, bye.